Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Robert Redford is among the most widely admired Hollywood stars of his generation, renowned for his iconic roles as the Sundance Kid, Bob Woodward and Jay Gatsby, and celebrated for his fierce commitment to environmental causes, independent filmmaking and his Sundance Film Festival. Why was Robert Redford's beauty both a blessing and a curse? Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. The legendary actor Robert Redford has been such a beloved and cherished celebrity for over half a century, but what makes Redford so highly admired isn't just the fact that he's so talented on screen. It truly all comes down to the in-between moments of his personal life. In 1960, Robert Redford stepped in front of the camera and acted in one of his first ever television series, Maverick. This was just the start of his shining acting career. Redford continued on to act in over 10 other projects that same year, and clearly there was no stopping him once he got his foot in the door. But it was in 1969 that his career started to really take off, when he starred in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. His vast career has seen him in all kinds of roles, including in All the President's Men, Ordinary People, The Natural, and more recently Avengers Endgame. The handsome actor has made countless audiences swoon with his rugged good looks. Of course, it's the substance Robert also brings to each role and film he touches that keeps us coming back for more. Redford has always seemed to offer a mature alternative to the mainstream elements of Hollywood, especially as he was the founder of the Sundance Film Festival in Utah. But behind the scenes of all his hard-earned successes were all sorts of personal obstacles and burdens that Robert needed to get through as well. Overcoming health and traumatic struggles in his childhood, combating the blessings and curses of his beauty, creating one of the biggest independent film festivals stateside, and his off-screen relationships, it's safe to say that Redford's life story is full of adventure. But before we jump into all of his success as an adult, what was life like for the actor as a child? It all started on August 18, 1936, when Martha Hart and Charles Robert Redford happily welcomed a beautiful baby boy into the world, Charles Robert Redford Jr. Little did they know that their beloved baby boy would grow into one of America's most loved and most attractive male actors of our time. Martha was a wonderful and caring stay-at-home mother, who Redford adored. However, the relationship between Redford and his father was much more complicated, with trouble seeing eye to eye with each other, but that didn't mean Redford didn't have male figures to look up to and connect with. The family was far from wealthy despite their posh address, and Charles Sr. looked to his son to turn the tide, putting the future actor under pressure he didn't welcome. "I didn't like being told I had to change the direction of the family," he says of his youthful rebellion. "I didn't like being told the only way to get out was to go to law school and be a certain sort of person. I didn't like being pushed." While he had struggles with his own father, Redford got along quite well with his grandfather and Uncle David from his father's side of the family, as well as his maternal grandfather too. From frontier skills to athletics to a strong taste for nature, each of Redford's family members had something different to offer and teach him. It's not always easy when you don't get along with your parents, but Redford was fortunate to have a very special and close relationship with his mother. She was full of life, full of laughter, full of love. She was out there. I mean, she would take chances, and she was very risky, and she taught me how to drive a car when I was 10, and nobody knew about it. I mean, that kind of stuff. So we had a close relationship, Redford shared. And knowing how lovable and full of life Redford is now, it's safe to say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Yet life, laughter and love aren't all that Redford inherited from his mother. There was a major obstacle that Redford and his family needed to overcome during his childhood. He grew up during World War II, and not only the war was hard to get through because it was an actual war, but the family suffered an incredibly hard loss because of it. David died in Luxembourg, where he was serving with General Patton's Third Army, when his jeep came under fire while crossing a bridge in 1945. Whether it's just a minor cold or the chicken pox, for any parent out there, you know how horrifying it is to witness an ill child. It all started when I was 11, growing up in Los Angeles. I had a mild case of polio, not enough to put me in an iron lung, but enough to keep me bedridden for weeks. More personal agony was to come. When he was 18, his mum Martha died, aged 40, after having stillborn twins. Far before Robert Redford found out that he had a knack for acting, he discovered a different talent that he had: sports. He didn't just choose to study at the University of Colorado because of his love for nature. The school had actually offered him a baseball scholarship. Especially for someone who was known to be a scrappy kid, can you imagine how exciting that must have been? Nobody can deny that Robert Redford is intelligent in addition to being artistically inclined, but he never fared well in school. He says that he had a wandering mind and would always be thinking about something else. I was not a good student throughout my entire life. My mind was out of the window. I drew underneath the desk. I drew pictures, he said. As a teenager, he had stolen hubcaps off cars and intruded into the backyards of people's houses and used their swimming pools. These small acts of teenage rebellion got him arrested on a few occasions, but he never went to prison. The aspiring athlete lost his baseball scholarship reportedly due to his penchant for alcohol benders, and later enrolled at New York's Pratt Institute of Art before jetting off to Europe to test his skills as an artist. One upside of Redford's college years was meeting Lola Van Wagenen. She was also studying at the University of Colorado, and the two quickly hit it off and fell in love. The two married in 1958, moved to New York City, and went on to have 4 children before divorcing amicably in 1985. Most actors have stories about the dodgy ways they were initially paid, or not paid at all, for their first gigs. In Redford's case, his first professional acting job was an appearance on a game show. Incredibly, he was never given his $75 acting fee and was instead compensated with an expensive fishing rod. About a year after he had tied the knot with Van Wagenen, he landed one of his first small gigs on Broadway in 1959's Tall Story, following with The Highest Tree. The newly found talented actor was slowly starting to become more and more recognised in the industry. He began guest starring on different television programmes as well, and would soon be making a full transition from on-stage to on-screen. Come 1960, Redford had been guest starring on countless of shows ranging from Alfred Hitchcock Presents to Maverick to The Twilight Zone and many more. Still though, it wouldn't be until the late 60s that his stardom would truly explode, and he would make a full transition to a television and movie superstar. He reprised the stage role in the famed 1967 film version opposite Jane Fonda, and with the success of the 1969 blockbuster Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he established himself as a major star in the true old sense of the word. As an actor, Robert starred in some of the biggest movies of the 70s, including The Way We Were, All the President's Men, and The Sting. In 1981, he picked up an Oscar for his directorial debut, Ordinary People. To give you an idea of how high Redford's star was during his heyday, allow us to bring up his performance in the World War II film A Bridge Too Far. Redford allegedly made $2 million for what amounted to 2 weeks of work. Celebrated film roles and directorial stints would follow, yet Robert would strive to maintain a comfortable distance from the general public throughout his career. But it wasn't necessarily always Redford's dream to become one of the most iconic rom-com stars of the century. In fact, he used to make fun of those types of movies. I grew up in a kind of a rough neighbourhood, and we'd go to matinees. Any time there was a love scene on the screen, we'd go, "Ah, boo, you tell 'em, lover," and make fun of the scene. Suddenly the idea that I would be that guy is just too much for me to take. If Redford's popular image has been that of a hell-raising womanizer, it is one his close friends temper. He's a long way from being a saint, says director Sidney Pollack of Redford, with whom he worked on numerous films, including the Oscar-winning Out of Africa. But if you're talking about substance versus the impression he gives, it's a case of total misunderstanding by the world for years. He's a minimalist. Everyone projects what they want onto him. Whenever he holds back, they fill in the gaps. While there was so much good to come out of Redford's life, and he was able to achieve and accomplish so many of his goals and dreams, his battles to deal and cope with all of life's hardships were far from gone. The 60s were full of ups and downs in the Redford family. While Robert was doing his best to create an ambitious and satisfying career path for himself, he also was focused on his family. In September 1959, after 2.5 months, his son suffered from sudden infant death syndrome. Not much has been shared with the public about Redford's firstborn son, Scott Anthony Redford. However, there's no doubt that it took a toll on the family. As we revealed earlier, Redford grew up into a family where tragedies or losses weren't really talked about, so it makes sense that he's been keen on keeping his personal life as private as possible over the years. Even as a highly respected and well-rounded superstar, though, Redford still had some struggles to overcome in the industry too. One of the issues that many actors struggled with back then, and today too, is being stereotyped or profiled as a specific type of character. Robert Redford's gorgeous blonde locks and handsome smile was perfect for rom-coms, but his acting talents were overlooked. Because of this, when it came to certain roles in more serious movies, like in The Godfather or The Graduate, he was overlooked. His beauty was proving to be both a blessing and a curse, since all of these casting issues stemmed down from being too good-looking. Whether it was harder for him to land more serious roles during the early years of his career, in more recent years that hasn't been the case at all, and we can't really say it has much to do with age. One of the greatest things about Robert Redford as a person is his strive and drive to accomplish things, which makes his commitment to the role one of the greatest things about him as an actor. No matter what struggles came towards Robert's way, though, he found a way to figure it out and get back on track. In 1980 he established the Sundance Institute, which has proved to be much more than an annual film festival. The year-round workshop nurtures young talent far from the glow of Tinseltown and is a labour of love for Robert. "It would be nice, just for my ego, for people to know how hard I work on it," says Redford, who consistently receives heaps of praise from visiting artists but doesn't court publicity. In the late 1990s, Redford began seeing German-born painter Sybil Sagers, though he predicted he'd never marry again. "I have to be careful in terms of never saying never, but I don't think I would go there again," he told People in 1998. He was right to be wary of saying never. The couple tied the knot in 2009. A staunch environmentalist, the ageing heartthrob turned his energy and star power towards preserving southern Utah's landscape from would-be miners. So outspoken was he that he received death threats, but carried on with the appeal nonetheless, celebrating victory in 1996 when then US President Bill Clinton created a 1.7 million acre national monument to protect the area. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Robert Redford? With over 50 years in the industry, Redford's catalogue is full of classic movies, and it would be hard for anybody to pick a favourite if asked.